Who's going to play the kartals? Who knows how to play the kartals? Who can? So. This is. Bit flat. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajikacharya Ashto Tadasadashi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Shil Haridas Thakur ki. Prem se gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Se Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinatha Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki. Shri Purushottam Chetra ki. Shri Ganga Mai ki jai, Shri Jamuna Mai ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai, Hari Nam Sankirtana ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishwaraya Krishna Stabila Swami Padajan Prabhu Yitanamane Namo Vishwaraya Krishna Stabila Swami Bhaktivedanta. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nivasesani Madhavasta Jati Satarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we're reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 10, the Summum Bonum, Chapter 7, the killing of the demon Trinavata. Text number 19. Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham Jagatam asakamasu Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham adadyo Jagatam asakamasu Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham Jagatam asakarmasu Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham adadyo Jagatam asakamasu Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham adadyo Jagatam asakamasu Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham adadyo Jagatam asakamasu Bhumo nidhaya tam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurusham adadyo Jagatam asakamasu Bhumo nidayatam gopi Vismita bharapidita Mahapurushamadadyo Jagatamasa Bhumo, on the ground, Nidhaya, placing, Tam, the child, Gopi, Mother Yashoda, Vismita, being astonished, Bharapidita, being aggrieved by the weight of the child, Mahapurusham, Lord Vishnu, Narayana, Adadyo, took shelter of, Jagatam, as if the weight of the whole world, Asa, engaged herself, Kamasu, in other household affairs. Feeling the child to be as heavy as the entire universe, and therefore being anxious, thinking that perhaps the child was being attacked by some other ghost or demon, the astonished Mother Yashoda put the child down on the ground and began to think of Narayana. Foreseeing disturbances, she called for the Brahmanas to counteract this heaviness. And then she engaged in her other household affairs. She had no alternative than to remember the lotus feet of Narayana, for she could not understand that Krishna was the original source of everything. Purport. Mother Yashoda did not understand that Krishna is the heaviest of all heavy things, and that Krishna rests within everything. Matstani Savabhutani, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9 text 4, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Krishna is everywhere in his impersonal form, and everything rests upon him. Nonetheless, na chaham tishvavastitaha, Krishna is not everywhere. Mother Yashoda was unable to understand this philosophy because she was dealing with Krishna as his real mother by the arrangement of Yoga Maya. Not understanding the importance of Krishna, she could only seek shelter of Narayana for Krishna's safety and call the Brahmanas to counteract the situation. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Garim Yadkripa Tamaham Bande Sri Gurum Dinatavinam. A garland. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so Mother Yashoda is perturbed, disturbed, in anxiety. She's faced with the challenge of Krishna in the form of a baby, a little baby, becoming heavier than the whole universe, or at least as heavy as the universe, and of course that's part of the theme of this chapter, or these few chapters, where even though Krishna appears as a baby, as a small child, he is still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, despite appearing in the diminutive form of a child, he still has the full potency of the Supreme Person. And so, how is he manifesting that in this particular situation? Yogamaya, yeah, Yogamaya's got something to do with it, but how is it manifesting in this scene? What's happening? He's as heavy as anything. So then, impossible to hold, right? Impossible to hold. And so, Mother Yashoda has to put him down. He's so heavy. And it's interesting because later on in this chapter, when Yashoda's about to feed Krishna, give him her breast milk, she opens up his mouth, and then inside of Krishna's mouth, she sees the whole universe, including herself and Krishna. So this is bewildering for Yashoda Mai, that even though Krishna reveals to her his omnipotency, in this particular case, he's demonstrating that actually he's the source, or he's the, we can say the source, but he's the embodiment of everything, right? And that's why he's become so heavy, because all of the whole creation exists within him. But of course, that's bewildering for Yashoda, because her relationship with Krishna, as Prabhupada mentions, is what? What's Yashoda's relationship with Krishna? Mother. And so what does that make him? Just a baby, right? And she can't. And this is a key feature of the residents of Vrindavan, is that even though Krishna reveals on occasion, through the different lila, the different pastimes, that he's the original, the Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. And everything, in this particular case, everything, the whole universe, the whole creation, everyone and everything is within him. Right? And so even though Yashoda gets a vision, if you like, of this fact, or these facts, she can't comprehend it. Neither do the other residents of Vrindavan comprehend that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because their relationship with him as, or in this particular case, as mother, right, her relationship with him as mother overpowers her perception of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Which is the key characteristic of these relationships with the residents of Vrindavan. Their relationship with Krishna is never at any time tinged with or influenced by a perception or a conception of Krishna as God, right? And so it's interesting. Yasoda is bewildered by the weight, and of course this is also leading to the next pastime of Trinavarta, picking Krishna up, but then also coming under the influence of Krishna's all-pervasiveness, and the fact that the whole of the creation is within him, and so he also feels the weight of... Well, Trinavarta is a male or a female? Male. Yeah. So Prabhupada quotes the Bhagavad Gita, the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that everything exists within Krishna. Right? What's that? Mayamidam tatam, what is it? Maya tatam midam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Right? So Krishna is revealing in this instance his presence within everything, and everything is within him. Right? Which then disturbs Yashoda Mai completely. So much so that she just puts Krishna down on the ground. It just puts him down, too heavy. Right? And then it's interesting, in the purport and in the Krishna book also, Prabhupada points out that two things. What does Mother Yashoda then do after she's alarmed at the weight of Krishna? Then what does she do? Loudly. Yes. She prays to Narayan, to God. Although Krishna is God, but she doesn't pray to him because she doesn't know that he's God. She can't. She can only relate to Krishna as her son, her baby boy. And but then what else does she do? Not mentioned in the verse, but Prabhupada mentions it in the purport, which is interesting. Calls for the Brahmanas. Yeah. Why the Brahmanas? Why does Mother Yashoda call for the Brahmanas, do you think? Huh? Yes, the distress of others. Yeah. And it's mentioned in verse 17, I think. Is it 16 and 17? There's a description of the Brahmanas and their qualifications and what they do. The Brahmanas chant prayers from the 4 Vedas and invoke auspiciousness, right? And a proper understanding of things. The Brahmanas are the emblem of knowledge, understanding, of a correct perception or understanding of the makeup of the whole creation. And so we see in these, somebody chanting. I can hear some. This is not japa time. Japa time was earlier. And if you can't be chanting and hearing the Bhagavatam at the same time. Or maybe. It's not. Yep. So is that just an echo coming out of the speaker? Yeah, so it's interesting. She prays to Lord Narayan for protection, right? And she calls out to the Brahmanas, because the Brahmanas are sufficiently qualified to give protection, to give a proper understanding of things. What to speak of chanting the prayers of the Vedas and seeking protection in that way. And we see this in this section of the Bhagavatam. We see the relationship between the cowherds men and the Brahmanas, the cowherds men and the Kshatriyas, and the relationship that exists between them. And the support and collaboration, the importance of each in relationship to each other and in cooperation and collaboration with each other. And so it's interesting. She doesn't call out for the Kshatriyas, she calls out for the Brahmanas to invoke protection for her son. So it's telling, it's inspiring to see how Mother Yashoda is such a devoted, dedicated mother, and her natural instincts are to protect her son, but in this state of bewilderment, because she thinks that because Krishna has become so heavy, that he's being attacked by a ghost or a demon. And then in her state of confusion, she just puts Krishna down on the ground. And then after that, goes about doing her duties, householder duties. And in one sense, is leaving Krishna unprotected, because that's when Trinavarta comes along. But as we know, these situations, this circumstance is all, these situations are all under the direction of Yogamaya, under the influence of the internal spiritual energy, right? So in this particular situation, in the Dham, in Gokul, the Yogamaya is controlling all of the activities, all of the influences, all of the lila that's being performed. And within this Leela, Krishna is revealing that he's ultimately in control. The bewilderment of Mother Yashoda facilitates then the transition into the next pastime, within which Krishna is then stolen by Trinavrata and is to be carried away. But of course, then Krishna reveals, as he's done with Yashoda, his all-pervading presence. Krishna's presence throughout the whole creation exists in the form of his energy. Right? He's there within everything in the form of his material energy, actually. And that's why he manifests as being, too heavy, too hard for Mother Yashoda to hold up. And this is a demonstration of Krishna's omnipotency and presence within everything. Prabhupada gives the example in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita how Krishna is within everything, but Krishna mentions he's not within everything, right? So he's within everything in the form of his energy, but not as himself, right? Prabhupada gives a nice example of how the king is present within his kingdom in the form of his agents, right? Who's an obvious example of the presence of the authority of the government that parents scare their children with sometimes? Police. Yeah, the police. Ooh, the police. So Prabhupada makes a point that the king is not present everywhere himself personally, but he's present in the form of his energy. As children, policemen, firemen, right, ambulance, especially the sirens, right. This is all an example of the energy of the king, or of the administrator at least. Right? So when a devotee witnesses the working of the energy of God, then he sees God behind it. This is a symptom of a devotee. And that's as a result of the devotee's devotion. That vision of being able to see Krishna within everything is not available for the materialistic people. They just see the external energy. Whereas a devotee sees behind everything Krishna's hand. And that comes about as a result of their devotional service and their mood of devotion. But they see God behind the activities of everyone and God within everything. But that's not, that vision and that perception is not ordinarily available for most everybody. It's just like, when you come to the temple and you put your shoes in a shoe rack, right? Do you do that? Yep. And you see Gopavrinda's shoes, right? And you think, oh, Gopavrindesh. Right? You see his shoes, but you think of the person. Right? I know when I go home, we've got our shoe rack at the door, and I see a Chincharupa's shoes, and I think, oh, a Chincharupa. Right? So devotees like that, they're able to see Krishna within his energy. So when they see the energy, then they say, oh, there's Krishna. Because that's quite advanced, by the way. When we see the working of the material energy, we don't necessarily think, oh, look, there's Krishna. Right? Just like we do when we see somebody's shoes. Think, oh. So that comes about because of the devotional mood, the devotional attitude, the devotional service. Prabhupada, what's that? Atar Shri Krishna Namadi Nabhaved Graham Indriyai. So by the observance of everything with our blunt material senses, we don't see Krishna within everything, which is the natural vision of a devotee. Because of the engagement of the senses in the service of the master of the senses. As a consequence of rendering service, especially our hearing and chanting, japa, worship of the deities, hearing the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, all of these activities, especially why we have our ISKCON sandwich. You know what the ISKCON sandwich is? When the Chincharupa bakes bread, that's the ISKCON sandwich. No. ISKCON sandwich is a morning program and an evening program where there's remembrance of Krishna, effectively. Or the performance of devotional activities that give rise to seeing Krishna within everything. It naturally comes for the devotees who are engaged in a regular sadhana practice. Instead of seeing the external elements within everything, a devotee is able to see Krishna within everything. Right? Just when the sun comes up, then the devotees, the brahmanas, chant their Gayatri mantra, right? And in chanting the Gayatri mantra, they're remembered of there's a remembrance of the Lord within everything. There's a remembrance of the spiritual master, there's a remembrance of Lord Chaitanya, there's a remembrance of Krishna in Vrindavan. And so that helps, or that sadhana practice, all of those sadhana practices, the performance of devotional service in the 9 items of devotional service gives rise within the mind of a devotee, within the heart of a devotee, that ability to see Krishna within everything. Not everybody has that. In fact, most people don't have that because there's no engagement in the process of bhakti. For those who engage in bhakti, then it's very easy to see Krishna within everything. Yet it's telling, isn't it, that the residents of Vrindavan are not able to see Krishna within everything. Well, I shouldn't say that. They're already engaged fully in their relationship with Krishna, and so they're seeing Krishna always, but not in the same way. It's different because they're ultimately always under the influence of Yoga Maya, and they're unable to see Krishna as God because their relationship is so powerful and they're so absorbed in their role as lover, as parent, as friend, as servant, that they can only engage with and interact with Krishna in that deeply absorbing role as and can only be demonstrated by the residents of Vrindavan. Their relationship with Krishna is so intimate and so tightly bound up in those pastimes that they're not able to see Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so there's only love and affection and familiarity rather than the awe and reverence that's that manifests when there's an understanding of Krishna as, in this case, Mother Yashoda thinks of him as Narayan, right? And it's interesting, isn't it? Because she, even though she has such a strong and affectionate relationship with Krishna, she can't see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what does she do when she sees Krishna in difficulty? Then she prays to Narayan, or she prays to the Brahmanas for protection. And that's an evidence of her intimacy and her love and affection for the Lord. So interesting in these pastimes how Krishna is manifesting his supremacy, but at the same time the relationship that he has with the residents of Vrindavan is still mixed with that love and affection rather than the awe and reverence. And it's interesting, when Lord Chaitanya was travelling in South India, he met a Brahmana called Vyankata Bhatta. Yeah, and Vyankata Bhatta was a Tattvavadi, was it? But he was a worshipper of Lord Narayan, Lakshmi Narayan. And they were friends. They would discuss and explore philosophy, devotional philosophy of the Bhagavatam and other Vaishnava, other Vedic literatures, and they were close. And so one day Lord Chaitanya asked Vyankata Bhatta, why is it that Lakshmi, who's always on the chest of Lord Narayan, why did she want to enter into the rasa dance, and so then performed austerities so that she could be eligible to enter into the rasa dance with Krishna? Jokingly, right? Jokingly. And Vyankata Bhatta said, and of course Lord Chaitanya was kind of intimating that Lakshmi wasn't being faithful to Lord Narayan. She wanted to go. She wanted to associate with Krishna. And Vyankata Bhatta makes a comment that it's not unchaste for her to want to be with her husband in that rasa, in that leela. It's not unchaste, because that's natural for the devotees to want to be with Krishna, right? But she couldn't be, despite the fact that she performed all of those austerities. She couldn't be, right? And then Lord Chaitanya said, but how come then were the personified Vedas, how were they able to get the opportunity to participate in Krishna's Rasa Leela? Because they what did they do? They didn't perform austerities, did they? How did the personified Vedas get the opportunity to? Anyway, whatever. They then were able to take birth as gopis, right? And then in the mood of the residents, because that meant that they completely changed their understanding of awe and reverence for the Lord in their the Vedas are always glorifying the Lord in all of his manifestations, in all of his pastimes, right? And so they got the good fortune of then being able to take birth as gopis in Vrindavan. And so they also then assumed that intimate and affection, loving relationship with Krishna that Lakshmi is never able to give up, right? It's her relationship with Lord Narayan, which means that she sees him always as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She can't see him in any other way. Whereas the the personified Vedas were able to take birth as gopis, associate them with the residents of Vrindavan, and in that mood have that very close and intimate connection with Krishna as his lovers, right? So Venkatabhata said the reason why Lakshmi wants to associate with Krishna is because the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan with the residents of Vrindavan are more sportive. There's more fun there, right? Whereas in Vaikuntha, there's always that mood of, you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and so I have to respect you, right? There can't be that close association of friendship or love. There's always that mood of, please accept my humble obeisances, which is appropriate for a devotee, by the way. We shouldn't think that we're so advanced that we're now, can act like the residents of Vrindavan. There's those. Bhaktivedanta Thakur describes the different types of upper sampradaya, right? And I don't know if you've had the shock of meeting the Shaki Beckis. You know who the Shaki Beckis are? Shaki Becky means beshi, dress, right? Shaki Becky means one who dresses like a gopi. So sometimes, you'll be in Loy Bazaar doing some shopping, and then a man will walk in, but he's wearing a sari and he's got red lipstick on, and he's obviously a man, but he's dressed up like a gopi. And their philosophy is, if we dress up and behave like a gopi, then we'll become a gopi, or we are a gopi. Have you seen Shaki Beckis? Yeah. India is an amazing place, isn't it? You get all sorts of things going on. It's like, whoa, where did this guy come from? or even, there's another story. There was in Vrindavan in the early days of the Krishna Balaram Mandir, the sadhus would come in the kirtan, and then they'd start rolling around on the floor of the temple room. The devotees, we were bewildered. How do we deal with these people, right? And, maybe they're as advanced as they portray. And Prabhupada said, you kick him in the head. And if he doesn't respond, then he's completely absorbed in his reverie, right? So that mood of intimacy and affection and closeness with Krishna is not something that should be imitated, right? And in fact, the six Goswamis demonstrate how we should follow in the footsteps and follow the mood, but not imitate it, right? And the interesting in the Goswami Ashtakam, it mentions that the Goswamis were very renounced, right? Chaktva Turnama Sesha Mandala Pati, they gave up all role or all positions of aristocracy, of influence, of power, right? And took up very humble roles of sadhus in Vrindavan. And it mentions they're able to do that. Why? Because they're absorbed in the mood of the gopis, gopi bhava, right? And I was thinking, well, what is that gopi bhava? Right? What is it? And of course, one of the reasons why these pastimes of the Bhagavatam in the early chapters of the 10th canto are super important. And it's interesting because Parikshit Maharaj mentions this in the beginning of this chapter, that hearing of the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, with the residents of Vrindavan, is the most potent of all of the katha that you can hear, because we get exposed then to this mood of bhakti that's exhibited in the devotees like Yashoda, and also later on in the pastimes of Krishna and the gopis, right? And we see that the gopis are prepared to give up everything for Krishna's service, just like the Goswamis. They gave up their positions, they gave up their reputations, right? In fact, you know, they so displeased the Nawab that, was it Sanatan got thrown in jail because he disobeyed the order of the Nawab, right? So, and he was his intimate associate and friend, practically speaking. Right? This is why, you know, one has to be careful in associating with the king in those days, especially because if you displeased him, there's a good chance you could go to jail, right? And Prabhupada makes this point, you know, that we shouldn't imitate, but that we should follow, right? So I was thinking, what does this Gopi Bhava mean? And I was thinking, well, if the Goswamis are the exemplars, right? And we see in Bhaktivedanta Thakur is described as being the seventh Goswami, right? And then we see in the so that we can assume then that Bhaktivedanta Thakur has also imbibed that mood of Gopi Bhava, right? Is that, we could assume that. And if Srila Prabhupada is a follower of Bhaktivedanta Thakur, then he's also a follower of the Goswamis and also has imbibed that mood of Gopi Bhava. Is that logical? Yeah, yeah. So how does that manifest? If we're also meant to imbibe the same mood of Gopi Bhava, and we're not going to run around as Shucky Beckies, right? What do we do? What does a devotee do who's exhibiting the mood of Gopi Bhava? What do they do? Huh? Preach. Yeah. What did Bhaktivedanta Thakur do? What's he famous for? As being a pioneer of preaching. What did he do? Books. Yes, books. So what did Prabhupada do? Wrote books. Not only wrote books, he went out on the street and distributed them himself. Hey, sit down. Hare Priya, isn't it? Hare Priya. Sit down. Good girl. You can dance later on. Kirtan is for dancing. Bhagavatam class is for sitting down and hearing philosophy. But we like your dancing. You're a very good dancer. Sometimes I have to be parent for the parents because they can't tell their children to do that. Yeah, so very interesting. Prabhupada followed in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. The previous acharyas, especially Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. An anomaly was Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, but also teaching us that we follow, we don't imitate, right? And Gaur Kishore Das Babaji didn't tolerate what should we call them? Imitators. He encouraged following, right? One has to be a follower. And so in Prabhupada's example, following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, preaching all over the world, taking the kirtan that was the life of the Goswamis, taking the Shastra and the philosophy, which was also the life of the Goswamis, right? Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno. They were expert in studying the Shastra, and that's Prabhupada, right? Kirtan, philosophy, worship of the deities. Although that's very interesting, because the Goswamis, their deity worship was actually very, very simple and spontaneous, whereas that we shouldn't imitate. Was it Sanatana Goswami kept his deity in a bag hanging from a tree? There's that story where what was the name of his deity? I can't remember. Madhamahan asked for some salt in his chapatis. And Sanatana Goswami says, don't be so fussy here. I don't have salt. Right now, can you imagine if you didn't put salt in the chapatis, what would a Chincharupa say? Eh? Wouldn't be happy. Korma, what to speak of. A Chincharupa is just an expansion of Korma. And Korma was focused on seeing that the offerings to the deity were the highest quality, right? Because we've got all the ingredients, not like we're not short of salt, right? Really, we're not short of any ingredients, practically speaking. And so our offerings our worship is in opulence, right? We offer Krishna everything in opulence. In fact, actually, it's interesting. Our mood of worship is actually in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. And so therefore opulent dress, opulent offerings, punctuality, right? 4:30 on the dot, what happens? Mangalati, right? 4:29, what happens? What happens at 4:29? The neighbours don't like that, but we like it. Krishna likes it. But it's all done in a mood of awe and reverence, actually. And there's a reason for that, so that we don't become too familiar and then imitate, right? So I was thinking, what is this Gopi Bhava, right? That we're encouraged to follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan, right? And that's how the personified Vedas got the opportunity to enter into the rasa dance, into that intimate relationship with Krishna, because they had to take birth as gopis, and that way then gave up any other awareness of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we're supposed to also follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan, and especially the gopis, right? So how do we do that? We do that by following Prabhupada, by following Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, by following Bhaktivedanta Thakur, and also by following the 6 Goswamis. But following the prescriptions for us specifically, the prescriptions that Srila Prabhupada has given us. Prabhupada understood the mood of the Goswamis. He understood the mood of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He understood the mood of Bhaktivedanta Thakur. And he then is empowered to provide us with the framework within which we can follow in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan and follow in the footsteps of the gopis. And one of the primary features of following in the footsteps of the gopis is giving up everything for Krishna's pleasure, ultimately. Not easy, by the way, give up everything. But we can do it. It's interesting, Prabhupada says, Krishna appears in the heart of everyone as the Supersoul. Right? And for those who are advanced, he reveals himself and his desires and his instructions in the form of the Supersoul. Right? But he also appears, because how many of us have an intimate connection with the Supersoul? Who's getting instructions from the Paramatma? Please raise your hands. Even if you were, you wouldn't raise your hands. But generally speaking, we know that most of us are not getting that instruction. But how do we get it? Krishna as the Paramatma appears in a form of the spiritual master. That's why Prabhupada is so important for us, because he's like that emblem of Krishna in the form of the spiritual master, who instructs us and guides us how to perform our devotional service in the mood of the gopis, but appropriate to 2026 Melbourne, Albert Park, 197 Dank Street, or wherever you happen to live in Melbourne. So it's interesting, if we develop that mood of surrender to Srila Prabhupada, and develop that mood of surrender ultimately to the Parampara and to the Goswamis, and we do it in the correct way, even if we're worshipping the deity in a mood of awe and reverence, we can still develop internally the same mood of surrender that is manifest in the residents of Vrindavan. That's what we're aiming to do. That's our purpose. And so that's why these pastimes, especially these chapters of the Bhagavatam that describe the Leela of Krishna and the residents of Vrindavan is preferred, not, I wouldn't say preferred, but is appreciated and relished by devotees like Maharaj Parikshit, because they're so important for us to study and become absorbed in, so that we are able to then imbibe the mood of the residents of Vrindavan. Not that we become the residents of Vrindavan like physically, but our mood of service is the same mood as the gopis, the gopas, etc. So very important for us to put focus and attention on what we're studying now. Of course, the whole Bhagavatam is important. Right? It's potent. But these sections, this section of the Bhagavatam is especially important for us. This is in my lifetime, this is the third time we've gone around. But I'll tell you something. In the first time we went around, we didn't do the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. We left it out. Because there was this fear, oh no, the rasa dance is, and of course, there's an interesting pastime in the beginning of ISKCON, where the devotees in LA started just only reading the Vrindavan pastimes, right? And then they were called the Gopi Bhava Club, right? The Gopi Bhava Club. And Prabhupada chastised them and told them, stop doing this. Right? Yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. We're actually supposed to cultivate that mood, but in the proper way, right? So that we have the right mood rather than imitate or start thinking, oh, now I'm so advanced, I'm a gopi. And you know, then if we ask the devotees, please clean the toilet, they won't do it. Oh, no, I'm a brahmana. I can't do that. Or whatever. So anyway, yeah, it's interesting. We got an opportunity to associate with the residents of Vrindavan and be absorbed in their mood, right? The mood. And primarily, what's that? What's the mood of the residents of Vrindavan? In one word that I'm thinking of, starts with an S. Huh? Service. Yeah, seva. Seva. And of course that's what we see in Prabhupada. Service. To everybody, ultimately, as a preacher, as a teacher. Interestingly, as a brahmana, which is what the Goswamis did. They served as brahmanas, ultimately. Well, beyond a brahmana, a Vaishnava, which is why Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur reinstituted or introduced second initiation and Brahminical initiation. And the reason why he did that was to demonstrate to the public that a Vaishnava is as good, actually is better than just being a brahmana. Okay, I should finish here. Does anybody have any comments or questions, thoughts? I think he turned it off. Just speak loudly.
Yeah, my question is that is it appropriate to say that the reason why one is not able to say
Yes, that's feeding back. Just turn it off. Speak loudly.
So my question is it appropriate to say that the reason why one is not able to see Lord Krishna in everything could got to do with our consciousness being colored by more of the materialist
Yes.
energy rather than spiritual energy?
Yes. Yeah. Prabhupada quotes a verse from the Prema Nivartana, is it? Huh? Prema Vivata, yeah. That says, if we're not focused on Krishna, we're automatically captured by Maya. Right? And so we've got the material energy here, we have the spiritual energy here, and then we can be influenced by either. Right? That's why the sadhana, the ISKCON sandwich that I mentioned, right? The morning program, hearing and chanting and remembering and serving, both in the morning and the evening, helps us to remember Krishna, right? And so be under the influence of the spiritual energy. But if we're not sufficiently engaged under the influence of the spiritual energy, then we cannot help but be captured by the material energy. Has anybody had that experience? One time a devotee said to Prabhupada, sometimes I'm, Krishna conscious, and Prabhupada says, you're always in Maya. Words to that effect, yeah.
Because whatever our mind meditates on,
Yes.
it becomes that consciously.
Yes.
Consciousness.
Yeah. Sanjat Sanjayate Kama is third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita.
If we meditate more on Lord Krishna,
Yes.
being conscious Krishna,
Yes.
then
Yes, yes. And that's why we have a sadhana practice. It's a practice to cultivate that mood of devotion. So we chant Hare Krishna for the purification of the heart. We worship the deities for the purification of the heart. We hear the philosophy for the same purpose. So that, after breakfast we come out and we see everything from a spiritual perspective. Right? And that we get by, and you can do this anywhere. It doesn't have to be. It's more potent in the temple environment because we're all here.
Proximity to the source.
But you can get that anywhere. You can do that at home by chanting, by worshipping at home, all of those things. The 9 items of bhakti, the practice of bhakti, are potent anywhere, right? And so that's why that morning program, evening program, beginning with hearing and chanting, is so powerful and so effective wherever we are, right? And so that then also puts us under the influence of the spiritual energy. I remember the first or second or third day I went to the temple to chant and associate with the devotees and go to the full program. And then after the morning program, I went to the supermarket to buy some boga or whatever. And I was looking at the people and I was thinking, these people all look like dogs and cats. I thought, this is the potency of chanting Hare Krishna with the devotees. I never felt like that before. Although that was probably just me big timing myself. But no, you're absolutely right. We're influenced by the material energy, but we can shift out it because the living entity is tatashta, shakti. And tatashta shakti means can be influenced either way. Right? And why association is so important and why morning program at the temple has so much potency, because it's done in a sacred place with like-minded, saintly persons. And so because of that, taking prasadam, hearing the philosophy, that purifies our consciousness and we feel it, right? And we also feel it when we go to work, right? Go to work and have to deal with people who don't have that mood, and they're just operating on the external, and so they may influence. Is that right? Yeah. How many of you have got a job? How many of you go to school? Yeah. Yeah, it can get to you. Somebody else? Thoughts, comments? Sibya, what's your thought for today?
I have
A question?
Yes.
Here, go on.
I was there.
I think what's going on is the volume of that microphone is too loud in there. That's what the problem is. So you get feedback. So just say it.
I was there whenever Prabhu just asked about Krishna's presence. You said that I should see Krishna everywhere. So sometimes when some things happen, some situations happen, we feel Krishna's presence. We're able to tell that Krishna is there. But it's not always in everything and everywhere. So what does a feeling Krishna's presence mean in everything?
What does?
What does feeling Krishna's presence in everything actually mean?
What does it actually mean? When you don't see that, what does it mean? It might mean that you're a little bit in Maya. No, look, it's very interesting. Have you heard of the 3 modes of material nature? Yeah. Are you familiar with goodness? Yeah. Are you familiar with passion? Are you familiar with ignorance? Sometimes, yeah. So we're able to understand the influence of the modes of material nature by their symptoms, right? And sometimes, even as devotees, we feel the influence of the modes of material nature. And so we then exhibit less than sterling qualities, mode of goodness all the time, right? And as a consequence then, our bhakti is sometimes mixed with the modes of material nature. In other words, it's not Shuddha Bhakti, right? But it's Vishuddha Bhakti. And so our bhakti is still there, but there's also the influence of the material energy. Have you experienced that? Yeah. So the cultivation of Krishna consciousness is potent and effective, but sometimes also because we're conditioned, right? And so as a consequence of conditioning, we're influenced sometimes by the modes of material nature. Now, what does Krishna recommend in that situation? What does he recommend? Yeah, and just if you're feeling blissfully enlightened in Krishna consciousness, what does he recommend? What does he recommend? Same as when you don't. Because sometimes you don't feel super floating on cloud 9. You don't feel like you're in Vaikuntha. You feel like you're in Patala Loka. Right. But you're still a devotee. Still a devotee. So what does Krishna recommend? In both circumstances, what does he recommend? Just keep going. Don't get overly inflated by self-realization, right? And don't become overly depressed when we're a little bit on the mental platform, right? Just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. And as we practice throughout life, we'll have our ups and downs, but the ups or the self-realization, its potency and its an effect will take more control of our lives, right? But even then, living in the material world is not easy. There's the story that Tamal Krishna Maharaj told of Prabhupada in Auckland, and he was chanting, and then he just put his beads down and he said, I can't chant. He was worrying about the Juhu project, right? And it was a battle, right? And so even Prabhupada said, well, no, I can't chant, and put his beads, still got too much going on. So, but does that mean that Prabhupada stopped chanting his rounds? No, obviously not. He would have picked his bead back up later on. When everything settled down, then we'll chant, right? So I think, ups and downs, what is it? What's that? Translation?
One who is in happiness or distress is equal.
Equal. Sukha dukkha same kritva. Labha labho jaya jayo. In loss or gain, victory or defeat, happiness and distress, same kritva. Right? Same means what? Be equal. Try to be equal. And I know it's happened to me many times. We're managing something and somebody does something stupid, right? And I say, oh, that's wonderful, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances, you fool. It's more like, what are you doing, you idiot? So, you know, there's our nature too. We all have our natural tendencies. It's called modes of material nature.
Will that be your Gopi Bhava and imitation? I think that's very important. Right? Swami believe that we should never imitate Lord.
We should what?
Never imitate.
Never imitate. Yeah, no, that's right. But sometimes we're just covered. We're just influenced so much.
Because of the tendencies.
Yeah, natural tendencies, what we were born with. Right? And that's going to be a particular mixture of passion, of goodness, passion and ignorance. And maybe not so much goodness, more passion. Or depending on the day and the time and what's going on, who knows what can happen. Right? But that's why, again, back to the sandwich. Good japa, good kirtan, good hearing, worship, these things are powerful. And why should Prabhupada encouraged and actually it's interesting, isn't it? What do we do? Yani Sha Savabhutana. Get up early, basically. This is what it is. Get up early in the morning and these are the activities of the Muni Pasyataha, right? The introspective sage. This is Prabhupada's translation of Muni Pasyataha. Is one who's looking internally, right? And that's what a devotee is. And the best time to do that is early in the morning, because everything's peaceful and we just can then chant. And because the chanting, the association with Krishna in the form of his name is so potent, it cleanses the heart and removes that influence of passion, ignorance, and even goodness, and puts us on the transcendental platform. And if we're able to do that, consistently, we'll make advancement. We'll be purified. And so, when somebody does something stupid, we'll offer our respects before we chastise them. Please forgive me for giving you the sauce. All right, okay. Nice to have your company. Contract Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Hare Krishna. How's it going, Mukund?
Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Enam Kanvandam Maravindalaya Taksham Bhagavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Bhagom Vigamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami Anganiyasa Sakalem Kriya Priti Manti Vasyanti Bhakti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam
Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnava रघुनाथान्वितं त्वं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवम् श्रीराधा कृष्ण पदान् सगन